What would you do if your own neighborhood tried to erase the one thing that meant the most to you? Would you stay silent, or would you fight back? It was the morning of Memorial Day weekend, and I had just finished setting up my front yard display. Small flags lined the walkway, red, white, and blue ribbons framed the porch, and at the very center stood a tall wooden cross draped with a folded flag. To me, it wasn't just decoration, it was a tribute to my father, who had served and sacrificed for this country. Neighbors walking by smiled, some even saluted. It wasn't just my tribute, it felt like the whole street carried the weight of remembrance that morning. But the happiness didn't last long. A few hours later, a neatly folded letter appeared on my doorstep. The letterhead read, Homeowners Association Notice of Violation. My stomach sank. The letter demanded that I take down the entire display immediately, claiming it was unauthorized decor that violated neighborhood guidelines. Unauthorized? It was Memorial Day. How could a tribute to fallen soldiers be considered against the rules? I stood there frozen, my heart pounding. I knew some of the HOA members could be strict, but this felt different, it felt personal. That night, I sat on my porch staring at the glowing lights of the display. I thought about my dad, about the men and women who never came home, and about the kids who would grow up never knowing their sacrifice. No, this wasn't just a decoration. This was a story that deserved to be told. But as I was lost in thought, headlights appeared. A black SUV rolled to a stop in front of my house. Out stepped Karen Whitmore, the HOA president. Arms folded, lips pressed tight, eyes full of disapproval. Take it down, she said coldly, her voice cutting through the night air. Or we'll fine you every single day it stays up. I clenched my fists. I didn't want trouble, but this was going too far. The court date arrived. I walked in, nerves heavy, but when I looked around, I wasn't alone. The courtroom overflowed, neighbors, veterans, reporters, even the mayor. Karen sat across the aisle, stiff and scowling. The judge listened to both sides. Karen argued rules, regulations, uniformity. I argued respect, remembrance, freedom. When the judge finally spoke, the room held its breath. While HOAs may regulate appearances, they cannot override fundamental rights. Memorial displays are not violations, they are protected expressions. Case dismissed. Cheers erupted. I exhaled, relief flooding through me. Karen's face went pale. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters asked how I felt. I smiled, holding back tears. This was never about me. This was about honoring those who gave everything. And today, we honored them. The next morning, I woke up early, determined to confront the issue. But when I opened my front door, I found something that made my blood boil. The HOA had placed a bright orange violation notice right in the middle of my display. It was taped to the wooden cross, the same cross that symbolized my father's service. I ripped it off, crumpling it in my fist. This wasn't just bureaucracy, it felt like an insult. My father gave his life for this country, and now some rule-following committee wanted me to pretend that sacrifice didn't matter. I marched straight to the HOA office. Inside, Karen sat at the head of the table, flanked by a few board members who avoided my eyes. Why? I demanded, slamming the notice on the table. Why are you targeting me for honoring my dad? Karen's lips curled into a smug smile. Rules are rules. Yard displays must be approved. And this, she gestured vaguely, is excessive. It's disruptive to the uniform look of the neighborhood. Disruptive? I snapped. You think honoring the fallen is disruptive? The room fell silent. Some of the board members shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Karen leaned forward. If you don't like it, you can take it up at the next monthly meeting. Until then, remove it. Or we'll escalate. I left the office shaking with anger. But as I walked home, neighbors stopped me. Mr. Daniels from across the street patted my shoulder. "We saw what you did. We're with you." And then Mrs. Alvarez added, "They can't silence all of us." Something shifted that day. This wasn't just my fight anymore. The neighborhood was beginning to take sides, and the HOA had no idea what storm was about to hit them. That night, I sat on the porch staring at the glowing flags, wondering if I should give in. The fines would be steep. I wasn't a wealthy man, every dollar mattered. But then I remembered my father's words, "Stand tall, son. Some things are worth the fight." So, instead of taking the display down, I added more. The next day, 2 new flags appeared on my lawn. Neighbors noticed. Some came over with their own small flags and quietly placed them along my walkway. By sunset, my yard looked like a field of red, white, and blue. Karen must have seen it too, because that evening another violation notice arrived, this one threatening legal action. But before I could even open it, a knock came at my door. It was Angela, a nurse who lived 2 streets over. She held out a flagpole. "My brother didn't make it home from Afghanistan," she said softly. "Would you add this to your display?" I swallowed hard, emotions welling up. Of course. Word spread quickly. By the next day, nearly a dozen neighbors had brought items, ribbons, wreaths, old medals, even photos of their loved ones. My little tribute had become a neighborhood memorial. The HOA wasn't just fighting me anymore. They were fighting all of us. When Karen drove by that evening, her face turned red. She slammed her car door shut and stormed up to me. "This is unacceptable. You're turning the whole community against the HOA." I stood tall. "No, Karen. You're turning the community against yourself." Her lips quivered with rage, but she said nothing. She spun on her heels and marched back to her car. And for the first time since this battle began, I felt hope. The following week was a whirlwind. Every morning I woke up to find more items left in my yard, a hand-painted sign that read, "Freedom isn't free," a framed photo of a soldier in uniform, even a candle that someone had carefully lit at dawn. What started as a single tribute had turned into something much bigger. It wasn't just my fight anymore, it was the town's. But the HOA doubled down. One morning, I discovered 2 men in reflective vests standing in my yard. They were hired contractors sent by the HOA to begin dismantling my display. I ran outside, heart pounding. "Hey! Stop!" I shouted. One of the workers hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "Sir, we were told to remove unauthorized property." "This isn't unauthorized," I said, my voice cracking. "This is our history. This is our sacrifice." Neighbors began pouring out of their houses. Phones came out, recording. Voices shouted, "Leave it alone," and "Shame on the HOA." The workers froze, then slowly backed away. "Sorry, sir. We can't do this," one muttered before climbing back into their truck. Karen appeared moments later, her face red with fury. "You can't stop us," she hissed. "We'll take you to court if we have to." I met her eyes. "Then we'll take this whole story to the world." That night, the videos neighbors recorded spread across local social media. By morning, thousands had seen what the HOA tried to do. Support poured in, not just from our neighborhood, but from across town. And just like that, the HOA realized they weren't just fighting one man. They were fighting an entire community. The HOA couldn't ignore the growing resistance, so they announced an emergency board meeting. Flyers were taped to doors, warning residents that fines would increase and lawful order would be restored. I showed up early. The small HOA office was already packed. Neighbors filled the seats, the hallway, even spilled outside onto the sidewalk. The air was heavy with tension. Karen sat at the center, her gavel in hand. She banged it down. "Order. This meeting is about one thing: unauthorized displays disrupting our community's standards. Murmurs spread through the room. I stood, heart pounding. This isn't about rules. This is about respect, for the men and women who gave everything for us. Are you saying their memory has no place in this neighborhood? Cheers erupted. Karen slammed her gavel again. This is not a debate. Rules are rules. Angela, the nurse, rose from her seat. Rules can't erase sacrifice. My brother died so you could sit in that chair. Don't you dare call his memory disruptive. The crowd roared louder. Even some board members shifted uncomfortably. Karen's face hardened. Enough. If the display isn't gone by tomorrow, daily fines will begin at $200. And we will take legal action. Gasps filled the room. People shouted. But Karen banged the gavel again and stormed out. I stood there, fists clenched. This wasn't just a battle anymore, it was war. The next morning, something incredible happened. As the sun rose, neighbors started gathering in my front yard. Some carried flags, others brought flowers, candles, or framed pictures. By noon, it wasn't just my street, it was the whole town. Veterans in uniform, children holding homemade signs, even the mayor showed up. A news van rolled in. Cameras captured the sight of hundreds gathered around my little display. A veteran stepped forward and saluted the wooden cross. His voice cracked, "We will not let their memory be erased." Reporters shoved microphones in my face. "Why are you defying the HOA?" I looked straight into the camera. Because remembering our fallen isn't optional. It's our duty. That clip spread like wildfire. Within hours, local stations aired the story. By evening, national outlets picked it up. My phone buzzed non-stop, messages from strangers, veterans, families who had lost loved ones. The HOA, however, stayed silent. But Karen? She seethed. That evening, she drove past, glaring out her window, watching as people lit candles at my display. And in that glow of hundreds of candles, I realized something: this was bigger than me, bigger than the HOA. This was a movement. The pressure was mounting, and the HOA knew it. So, they made their boldest move yet. Early one morning, I awoke to the sound of trucks. Outside, a group of uniformed security guards stood beside city workers. One held a clipboard. "We're here on HOA orders," he said. "We've been told to clear unauthorized property." I froze. This was it, they were really going to rip everything down. But before I could speak, voices rose. Dozens of neighbors emerged, forming a line across my lawn. Angela stood at the front, arms crossed. Veterans joined her, their medals glinting in the morning sun. "You'll have to go through us," one of them said firmly. The workers hesitated. They weren't prepared for resistance like this. Cameras came out again, live streams began. Within minutes, hundreds were watching online. The standoff lasted nearly an hour. Finally, the workers lowered their tools. "We're not touching this," one said quietly. They packed up and left. Karen, watching from her SUV, slammed her steering wheel in frustration. Her plan had failed, again. But I knew she wasn't done yet. Karen's anger boiled over. She called a special court hearing, trying to fast-track legal action against me. I received the notice in the mail: failure to comply with HOA rules. Potential fines up to $10,000. My chest tightened. $10,000. I couldn't pay that. They were trying to break me financially, to crush me until I gave up. But when word spread, the town responded again. Neighbors set up a fundraising page. Within 24 hours, hundreds donated. Veterans groups reached out offering legal support. Even strangers online sent messages: "We've got your back." The pressure shifted again, but this time, onto the HOA. News outlets questioned their motives. Editorials called them heartless. At the next HOA board session, half the members resigned, refusing to be part of what Karen was doing. She was alone now, clinging to her gavel, but losing her grip on power. And still, the display stood. Stronger than ever. That evening, the town gathered one last time at my front yard. The display glowed brighter than ever, hundreds of flags, candles, photos, ribbons, and wreaths stretching across the grass. Music played softly. Veterans saluted. Children placed flowers at the wooden cross. Angela read the names of fallen soldiers from our town, her voice trembling with emotion. I stood silently, staring at the flickering candles. My father's face flashed in my mind, his words echoing, "Stand tall, son. Some things are worth the fight." And I realized, this fight wasn't about a rule, or a fine, or even the HOA. It was about unity. About reminding ourselves that no committee, no piece of paper, no rulebook could ever erase sacrifice. Karen never showed her face again. Soon after, she resigned as HOA president. The community had spoken, and she lost. As the night drew to a close, I whispered a quiet promise, "Dad, we stood tall. And we won." The crowd cheered, voices rising into the night. The town had rallied. The memory had been preserved. And the display, the tribute, would stand, forever.